The old man stood at the gate, a folded flag in one hand and a rusted silver medal in the other. His coat hung loose over his shoulders, the same one he'd worn to his wife's funeral a decade earlier. "I'm here to donate this," he said quietly to the two young soldiers guarding the military base. They barely looked up. One of them squinted, took a step forward, and chuckled. "Sir, this is a secure facility. You can't just walk up with junk and expect us to take it." The other laughed. "Go home, Grandpa." Behind them, tourists and visitors to the base glanced over briefly, then looked away. Henry Cole lowered his eyes and nodded, backing away with slow, stiff steps. As he turned, the young soldier radioed in with a smirk. "Control, we've got an old man here, causing a minor disturbance." Probably confused, requesting escort. The gates stayed shut, and just like that, Henry Cole, war hero, Silver Star recipient, and forgotten veteran, was turned away like he didn't matter. Henry woke up every day at 6 a.m. sharp. Not because he had somewhere to be. Habit. The military had trained his body to rise with discipline, and 50 years later, it still obeyed. His house was quiet, too quiet. No kids, no pets, no wife. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the creak of old floorboards. He made his coffee the same way every morning, poured it into the same chipped mug, and sat at the table staring at the same black and white photo of his late wife, Lillian. She had passed 8 years ago, taking with her the only voice that reminded him he once mattered. In the living room, tucked in a wooden box, lay a folded flag and a silver star with his name engraved on the back. He hadn't touched them in years, but that morning, something in his chest shifted. It was time, he thought. Time to give them to someone who would remember. Someone who would understand what they meant. The base had a new memorial wall. He'd read about it in the local paper. Maybe, just maybe, they'd find a place for an old man's last offering. It was a cold morning, but Henry didn't mind the chill. He walked carefully along the gravel shoulder beside Route 40, the base looming in the distance. Every step brought back a memory, not of medals or salutes, but of screams, of dust, of carrying a bleeding friend across open fire. Vietnam never really left him. It just got quieter over the years. When he reached the gate, his heart was pounding, not from the walk, but from something deeper. Hope, maybe. The young guards didn't recognize him. He wasn't surprised. "My name's Henry Cole," he said, holding out the flag and medal. "I served 1968 to 1973. I'd like to donate these to the memorial." They stared at him. "Do you have an appointment?" one of them asked. "No, He trailed off. The second soldier smirked. "You can't just show up and hand over your Boy Scout badges." That one stung. "Let's get base security," the first one said into the radio. Henry backed away, heart thudding. "I'm sorry," he whispered. No one heard him. Inside the break room just beyond the gates, the two young guards burst in laughing. "You should have seen him," one said, pouring himself a soda. "Old guy thought he could just walk in and drop off a fake medal." The other leaned against the wall, snickering. Said he was some kind of hero. Looked more like a guy who got lost on his way to the nursing home. A few others joined in, chuckling between bites of vending machine snacks. "Henry Cole," one of them said mockingly. "Sir, I have a medal. Please honor me." The laughter grew louder, but in the far corner, seated alone at a table, Colonel Rayner set down his cup and turned. He hadn't heard that name in decades, but he hadn't forgotten it. Henry Cole. That name had once meant everything. Afghanistan, 1985. Rayner was just a terrified private, bleeding from the leg, trapped behind a burnt-out jeep. His squad was pinned down by enemy fire. All seemed lost, until a man with graying sideburns and steady hands stormed the field with nothing but a rifle and grit. That man was Sergeant Henry Cole. He dragged Rayner through 200 feet of bullets and shrapnel, never once ducking, never once stopping. 9 men survived that ambush because of him. The Silver Star was pinned to Cole's chest 2 months later. No speech, no ceremony, just a quiet nod and a walk back to camp. Rayner never saw him again. He assumed the old warhorse had retired and vanished in his civilian life like most of them did. Until now. Until today. That was him, Rayner whispered aloud. The room had gone quiet. He stood up, his chair scraping across the floor. That was him. Within minutes, Colonel Rayner was at General Briggs' office. Breath short, voice urgent. "Sir, there's been a mistake," he said. "A veteran was turned away at the gate this morning. Name's Henry Cole." The general looked up slowly from his paperwork. "Henry Cole?" he said, voice tightening. "You mean Sergeant Cole?" Rayner nodded. "The one who saved our platoon. The one with the silver star." General Briggs stood without another word and walked to the window. "You're telling me we turned away a damn war hero?" Rayner nodded again, and mocked him. A silence filled the room like smoke. The general turned sharply. "Get the convoy ready. I want a full uniform detail. Now we're going to his house, and we are going with honor." Back at home, Henry sat in his recliner, the folded flag still resting on his lap. He hadn't spoken a word since he returned. He didn't bother turning on the TV. The medal, still clutched in his right hand, felt heavier than it had in years. He thought of Lillian, wondered what she'd say if she were here. Probably something like, "They don't deserve it, Henry." But he wasn't sure. The silence in the house was thick, and then he heard it. The unmistakable low rumble of diesel engines outside. He stood slowly and walked to the window. And what he saw made him blink twice. A full military convoy, Humvees, a black SUV, soldiers stepping out in full dress uniform, and in the center a tall figure in command, General Thomas Briggs. The old man's breath caught in his throat. The doorbell rang. Henry opened the door, still clutching the flag like a shield. Briggs stood at attention, then offered a crisp salute. "Sergeant Henry Cole," he said, "on behalf of the United States Army, I offer our deepest apology and our gratitude." Rayner stepped forward, now in his full officer's uniform. "You saved my life, sir. I've waited 38 years to say thank you." Behind them, the two young guards who had mocked him now stood stiffly in formation, heads lowered in shame. General Briggs turned to them. "These men have something to say." The first soldier stepped forward, trembling. "Sir, I was wrong. I didn't know who you were. Please forgive me." The second followed, eyes wet. "We're sorry, sir. Deeply." Henry looked at them for a long time and then said, "It's not about me. It's about remembering those who didn't come home." A week later, on Veterans Day, the crowd at the base was the largest in years. Rows of soldiers, veterans, and families filled the courtyard. At the center stood a new glass display case. Inside it, a folded flag and a silver star. Below it, a plaque read, "Donated by Sergeant Henry Cole, for the ones who never made it back." The crowd rose as the general took the podium. "Today we honor a man who served with courage, who was forgotten, and who reminded us all what dignity looks like." Henry walked slowly to the stage, dressed in his best suit. He took the microphone, voice soft but clear. "This medal, this flag, they're not mine. They belong to every man I fought beside. Some made it, some didn't, but all of them deserve to be remembered." As he stepped back, the entire audience stood in a long, silent ovation. And for the first time in decades, Henry Cole smiled. Not with pride, but with peace.